Okay. Well, I'm going to start. I think most folks are here. Welcome. I'm glad everybody was able to make time this morning and join us. First, I wanted to just sort of give everybody a update on where the program stands and how things are going. We have over 2,000 applications in the process. Either people are working on them, of which about 1,250 have actually been submitted. For the ones that have been submitted, if all of them get all of the funding that they're requesting, that will be for about $10 million, which is about a quarter of the money that we actually have to spend. So we've had quite a big response. The first payments were out last week, and they were all for utilities. But this week we also have payments going out, and these will include some property taxes and mortgage payments. So be glad to get that process started and see how the back and forth goes with this with the mortgage companies. Our initial sort of rush of applications, I mean, we had 400 apps in 1 week, has meant that, we've got kind of a large initial pile that we're trying to work through. And they are working through them. They've hired, the title basin has hired another case manager and also someone to work on signing up providers. And they are working that pile down. But I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that, the processing of these applications includes, they have to actually pull them up, review everything, make sure all the documentation is there, make sure everything is signed. And then they have to make sure that they are, eligible for the program, and no payments can be made until we've confirmed the amounts with the vendors. So it is a time, it takes time to go through that process, and that's why on the FAQs for the program, we've always said that, these application processing can take 45 to 60 days. And I know that folks who initially applied, probably back, last week of January or so, might start to be getting antsy, and I don't know if they're calling you about that, but just let them know that, if it's submitted and they have an account number, they're in the queue and they're being worked on. But it does take time to get these going, and there are a lot of applications in the system. So I did want to share with you a website. Maybe Leslie can put it in the or I can do it actually. We have some statistics up on our website that people can refer to if they're interested. So I'll put this in the chat. I'm trying to do this all on one screen, so just a second. So, and this will be updated from time to time. Leslie, how often are you updating these stats in the viz on our website?
These are updated every day.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep. And it'll expand. There's just a few stats right now up there, but over the next few weeks, this will get built out so that there's a lot more information about who the applicants are, and so that we can assure that we're reaching all the parts of the state and different types of homeowners who need assistance.
Great. So that's sort of a general overview of where we stand with the program right now. I wanted to go through some of the questions that folks had submitted about, issues that they had seen that they wanted to discuss here today. So let me start with that. The first question that I have, and most of these are not going to be answered by me, so you don't have to listen to me drone on. One is, applicants have asked what happens if they miss additional payments after they submit the application, which would only include a request of the amount delinquent at the time of submission. What is the most accurate guidance to provide them? I'll take initial stab at it, but Rebecca can jump in if I'm misstating. But the application obviously will be as of the date of the application. There will be, obviously, as time goes by, additional amounts might become due. The case managers, when they're doing the confirmation with the actual vendor, will get what's actually due at the time that confirmation is made, which will obviously be sometime after the initial application comes in. So it will take into account additional amounts that may have become due since then. Now, there might be a period between when the confirmation is made, and because that doesn't mean that, you know, the money's going to go out the same day. So because we do our payments, you know, weekly, and so processing might take another week or so to get the money out the door. So there might be even additional amounts that come during that time, depending on the situation. If we can make up for that additional balance that might accrue, especially in a mortgage situation where, you know, you really are looking for a true blue reinstatement down to zero. I don't know if it's quite as big a deal in a utility situation. So Rebecca, does that sound about right when you're in your understanding of the process?
No, that was perfect, George.
Okay, great. Patty had asked a question about, does someone who has a reverse mortgage but is not making payments eligible for the program? Reverse mortgages are eligible. I know that people can have issues with reverse mortgages when it comes to, say, they violated the requirements to pay the property taxes or pay the utilities, and the reverse mortgage servicer might have made those advances, and those need to be repaid. So those can be covered under the program. And Grace notes, thank you, Grace, that the reinstatement quote is usually good for a 30-day period, and that's usually enough time, obviously, to get the payment made after we do get the reinstatement quote from the lender. Patty Tedesco asked a question about generating an email for somebody, having an email generated by the staff. I guess if it's not an email where this person is going to be able to access and get information about the program, I guess maybe I guess, Patty, is this a situation where the person will be able to access this email and get information for it, or is this just a matter of having you be able to access information about the application?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Great.
Okay, great. So what's happened is we've had an applicant walk in the door for help. They don't have access to the internet. They don't have an email address. I guess Peter tried to generate an email address for the person, but now it's not as easy as just signing up on AOL. It's like double verification and so on and so forth. So the applicant themselves, they don't have access to email. So Peter was trying to manage their email in order to apply for the program. But Peter also said he wondered if he uses his own VCIL email address. Once you have an email address in the system, it's just for one application. Is that correct? So so what is your recommendation, since that's been a challenge so far?
Well, I think is otherwise the application being submitted electronically through the applicant portal?
Yes, Peter was trying to do that in the office through our computers, through the portal, with the guy's made up email address which he tried to do just to generate an email to generate an application in the portal. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, no, I understand.
But the applicant themselves doesn't have access unless they come here and Peter logs on for them and does that sort of process.
Rebecca, in this situation, wouldn't we want them to say that they want their communication by regular mail or telephone?
Yeah, I would say communication preference would be regular mail or telephone, and I would say you're really talking about a paper application at this point.
Yeah.
You know, if it's just they don't know how to create an email address or they're having difficulties, then it makes sense to do all those steps for them. But if they have no internet, they have no way to access that email address, it really doesn't make sense to go through all that, because it's just going to become this black hole where people think communication is being received and it's not being received. And then it's going to become very frustrating probably for everyone to understand what's going on. So I would suggest somebody who does not have access to the internet, who does not have access to email, you would fill that out as a paper application. That way you've gathered their signature and then you can forward that on to have it input.
Thank you.
I think that
may I say something about that? Sorry, this is Karen Rubin.
Hi, Karen. Sure.
Hi. Thanks for your help getting on. Anyway. Also, I created an email address the other day for an applicant, and my feeling was that I would, one, be able to check their status through the portal, which I have not done yet, but that I also could log on at any time and check their status. So the fact that this elderly woman wasn't receiving the emails wasn't of as much concern to me, because I figured I could check in. Does that sound like a legit way to do this?
Well, did this person, when the application was being created, did this person sign the application themselves?
Well, I had them sign the form.
The paper form?
It. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So
go ahead. Sorry.
I just need a little more information. So you created an email address, you filled out the application through the Apply Now online portal?
Yeah.
Okay. Were they in the office with you?
They were on the phone with me.
Okay. So did you designate yourself as an authorized representative?
Yes.
Okay. And they have access to internet, like
no.
Okay. No. I mean, the best way you're going to be able to, you said you have access to the CMS portal, right? The back-end case management. That's the best way you're going to see notifications, the full case view. If you're not seeing that yet, it may be because they haven't gotten through the point of eligibility approval, that it's been turned over, quote unquote, to your organization. It has to go through an initial eligibility approval before those start showing up.
Well, I guess, Karen, the other question is, if this person doesn't have internet access and you were doing everything over the phone, then this person never actually signed anything, right?
Well, she said she sent her the paper application, it sounds like, as a backup.
Well, I printed the authorization form and signed that, and but see, they signed the TPA, but that doesn't sign the attestation of the information that they applied with. So basically they've said, yes, I'm giving you authorization to contact our mortgage servicer through the TPA, but at the end of the application process in the online portal, there's this page that you do a little squiggly signature, right? Or type it in that says, I swear that this information I'm giving you is true. If they're not completing that, or you're not sending them the paper application to sign with that information filled, then there's nothing holding them to the information that they gave you over the phone to be accurate. Well, so that is going to be a problem, I imagine, for all of us, because we are helping these people fill in the application over the phone.
and with VRAP, we check a box saying I'm a service representative or whatever, and then we sign for them. But we check boxes that say, the person authorizes us to do this, because we're not, I'm helping people in Enosburg Falls who are elderly, and we're never going to be in the same place as all these people.
Yeah, but I would submit those applications through the back end as either a phone or a paper application, and not the front end, because there are things as far as the way the system's built to generate the third-party authorization versus using the signature that was provided at the attestation point. Sometimes there can be, if you don't have all the documentation present, it becomes very troublesome to try to complete that application. So if you have access to the back end, I would recommend you use the new application button and you fill it out as a paper or phone application on that side. I still would encourage you to try to get those signatures. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, Rebecca, to the extent that they tried to do it over the back end in this situation, and obviously they're not going to have a signature to put in there, does then the case management get in touch with the applicant themselves and to gather the signatures by sending them a paper form, or how does that work?
I'll have to check with Ingrid to be 100% sure, but at least we know that it's been submitted by an authorized person, right? Like when you're doing it on the front end for someone, we have no idea that it's not that person. Like you've check marked yourself as an authorized representative, but anybody can check that box and say, I have somebody filling it out for me. It's going to come through without a signature. It's going to come through maybe without a TPA. And the case manager's first instinct is going to be, this doesn't meet eligibility. Like there's no signature, there's no this or that. If there's coming from the back end, they know to reach out to you maybe originally, or to the person and get more information. Maybe you've entered some case notes, some different aspects like that would help the case manager in understanding what the situation is.
So,
and that the person is not going to be receiving any of those communications that they're trying to send them through the portal, that they need more information or they're trying to contact them. That's, it's going to be a fruitless effort.
Okay. So, this is going to be the situation with all of the people that we're helping. So.
Well, there are people who I'm assuming you're helping because they're just having questions as they're trying to do it themselves, or that you're encouraging them to do it themselves and you're talking them through it. And those people presumably are doing it online, and you're just answering questions for them or helping them answer stuff as they go along. Yes, there are people obviously who are not, or who have mobility issues and who aren't necessarily going to be handy to do that. But just understand that this isn't ERAP. The rules aren't the same as ERAP. We really need real signatures from real people, and the real people need to be the applicants. So one way or another, that has to be gathered. And to the extent that you do this, that's great, but there will be ongoing outreach to these folks, and we still will need to talk to them, or to somehow get their signatures. Okay. Let's see. Can you please explain the back-end application process? Is that, Rebecca?
Is there something, I will give some of my personal requests as you fill out the back-end process. But if you have specific questions, I'm going through this, please.
Yeah, I think, well, first, let me just say that some of these folks are not with entities that are doing the housing counseling. And entities that aren't doing the housing counseling don't have access to the back end process. The back end is for people with that particular level of access. Right. So if you are finding, that you're in that kind of situation and you're, for example, Patty, you guys are at BCIL, you don't have that back end access. You know, I would, you know, have them go to one of the housing counseling entities to work with having the information entered. So this really is only for the folks who are doing the housing counseling.
Or
so,
filling a paper application and then forwarding it. Like you can still help them fill the
Right.
application via the paper application without using the back end. What happens is that gets then sent to a mailbox, and one of our case managers takes it and enters it for that person. So you know, feel free to use the paper application as needed. Don't feel like you're forced, especially for somebody who does not have internet capability. Like that's a big thing, right? We need to understand that this person needs paper or phone communication. So don't feel like you're trying to force an electronic process that it's going to make it so much faster or anything, because
Right.
those applications are received and input every single day. And that is monitored all the time. So they're prioritized just like one that comes in online. And when you do, if you do have access to that back end and you're filling out those applications, there are many fields that are truly required fields, and they're marked with asterisks, but are the requirement is waived in the back end, because there are circumstances when somebody needs to be able to put in certain things or move things through a process, or let's say there's lots of different reasons why they're not there. However, if you just go in and you just put the person's first name, their address, and their social security number and submit it, that case is going to become in this like cycle of we need more information, it doesn't meet the initial requirements. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be entered. Like you need to fill out absolutely everything you can. If you know that that person is coming in to meet with you to fill out this application, please counsel them. These are the documents you need to bring with you. Please, you know, guide them so that you can fill out as much information as possible. Because when it comes in and things are missing, it becomes either we don't have enough information to even reach out to this person, which we've seen some like that, or it becomes a needs more information. We need more documents. And it becomes an outreach thing. So then you're reaching out, asking for documents, you're reaching out, asking for this, and it becomes a little bit overwhelming for the applicant, as well as a timing thing, right? So like resetting that clock every time we're asking for something, and things just get
Slow.
way more delayed than they need to be. So really focusing on entering absolutely as much information. And there's some information that's critical in getting those applications through. And the documentation is a big thing. I know sometimes not everybody has everything with them, but the more you can collect up front, the absolute better experience that they're going to have.
There was a question about how far behind do you have to be to apply, or can you apply preemptively when the applicant anticipates or know they will be short for the next mortgage payment, for example? Well, the program is set up to pay for past due balances. So if you're not past due, and certainly if you're not past due when we ask the mortgage company, hey, what's required for reinstatement, then, and they say 0, then it's 0. And remember that this program is a one-time only kind of situation. So I don't know that it's necessarily, especially if somebody's had a, you know, and this sounds weird to say, but I mean, you need to think about if all we're going to do is cover them for 1 month, you know, is that, and then that was their shot. Is that really the best idea? It may be better to give them, you know, to talk them through, well, how are you going to handle this in the future? And maybe it's better to wait a couple months until they actually have a plan for everything before asking us for the money. That's one of the reasons that, you know, we tell people to view the video, to talk to their servicer, I mean, if somebody anticipates they possibly might be getting behind, I would talk to the servicer first before coming to us and say, you know, can I have a forbearance, for example, so that they aren't shown as being behind.
Can I jump in really quickly, George?
Yeah, go ahead, Grace.
Helpful. So under Regulation X, most mortgage servicers cannot begin a foreclosure proceeding until someone is at least 120 days behind on their mortgage. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I know people want to stay on top of their mortgage. They get very nervous when they anticipate they're not going to be able to make a payment, but it's helpful for folks to know that they have that 120-day buffer, and that may help in terms of planning timing of VHAP applications or trying to work through loss mitigation with their servicer. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that.
Right. And Grace, you had a question about circumstances where we need bankruptcy documentation and why. We would want to know that the person is in bankruptcy because all the payments obviously go through the bankruptcy trustee. And we need to make sure that the trustee is set up to accept the payment and apply it to the mortgage. You know, if there are other liens that somehow the trustee might think they need to go first, we just need to make sure that the trustee understands what's happening and that the mortgage company understands that we will work with the trustee in that situation. So that's one of the reasons we do that. I don't know, Polly, did you have any other things you wanted to add to that?
Just, I thought the question was something about, have you gone through bankruptcy in the past and the request is for discharge documents?
Oh, the discharge documents?
Yeah, so I wasn't clear, and I think I might have a client or two that are currently in bankruptcy, but may have checked I previously had a bankruptcy discharge and now they're being asked for discharge documentation. So I'm just trying to understand.
Okay. Yeah, Polly, do you wanna jump in?
Yeah, and I think that's just to make sure that one door closed before we go into another, and so to speak. But we're looking for the most current status of that person in bankruptcy. I've had a number of conversations with Jan and found out the things that he would be requiring for us to show to him and to prove and to back up. And obviously, the priorities get paid, but in this situation with the backup documentation, he can go for the mortgage, whereas obviously where we want this to be applied. So this is trustee requirements in meetings and conversations I've had with Jan.
It sounds like that's in chapter 13s, but chapter 7s are a little different, right? In that folks can like ride through and just continue paying their mortgage directly to their mortgage servicer in a chapter 7.
Right, absolutely. And I haven't worked with the chapter 7 trustee. I've just worked with 13. Yeah.
So in that situation, well, I mean, that you're seeing the distinction, Grace. So, I mean, if you've got somebody you're working with, that might be a point to note in the comments, and just say that this is a chapter 7. This person's working directly with the mortgage servicer, or if it's a chapter 13, to indicate it's a chapter 13. So we need to coordinate with the trustee. Okay.
And I mean, Vermont's one of the few, very, very, very few states are even dealing with bankruptcy, because, as you know, it's such a hybrid and it's so complicated. And fortunately, we've got trustees who are willing to actually, physically talk to us and work with us. Some of the other states have asked me if we're crazy because we're doing this, but I think it's going to be wonderful if we can.
Crazy good, Polly. Crazy good.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
George, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, so Cody has 6 clients in the applicant portal that we now understand need those paper applications, but she's still not able to view them in the applicant portal so that she can reach out to them and get them the information that they need. I don't know who can maybe answer this question, but
are these people who had started applications in the applicant? She had started applications for them in the applicant portal?
in the management portal. And then, so our understanding initially was that applications in the management portal would not require a signature. And then I think that evolved to all applicants require a signature and paper documentation. And so the plan was to reach out to these folks, send them a letter explaining what happened, and send them the paper application. But the issue is she still can't see these clients in the applicant portal, so she can't do any outreach because she can't see them.
Are those the 7 people that we had our meeting about last week, Andrew?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I bet the answer to that question is what Rebecca had said previously, right, Rebecca, about the stage of the application and where it's at. I looked at some of the statuses and they haven't, I don't think they've moved to the review stage. So Rebecca, you might want to speak to that in more detail, but I think it's what you just outlined with the previous question.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's, I mean, I would suggest if you have situations like that, you track them at least for a little bit, just in another form, whether it's, you know, an Excel spreadsheet or something. I'm looking right now in
Sure.
the dashboard, and I see 4 cases that
Yes.
I can see have been assigned to opportunities.
So going forward, I have asked her to create an Excel spreadsheet with all with information about each client, but this was
prior to that.
Before this was prior to that, and so she can't reach out to them without knowing who they are. And I believe there were 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
I only see 4. I can check with our case management lead and see if she can pull down the list. If it still shows, right? Because if it that may, when we did the data fix to change that, it could have possibly overwritten 2 of them, and they haven't been through the eligibility part. I do show 4. I can send her the information and ask her to get you. It'll be sent as an encrypted email, of course, because there'll be PII.
Okay.
But I can at least get you these 4, and I'll see if she can dig a little bit and see if there's any more.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, I know that she had 7 because 1, she had just received, the very last one, some recent documentation, and she was going to hold them until she sent the paper applications and the letter explaining the process, and until she got them back signed so that she could forward them to VHFA. But I knew there were 7.
Okay, well, if any of the ones that she has the paper documentation for are not these, I would think she could probably use that information on the paper documentation to reach out to them until these others show. I can't, unfortunately, we can't force the system, and we can't possibly tell if it hasn't been assigned to them. So, like I said, I know I see 4 right now. We'll get them this information. I'll dig to see if anybody has been designated, or maybe we can check by, I don't know.
Right.
It could be a rabbit hole, but I can at least get you these 4.
Great, thank you.
Rick had a comment, and then Donnelly, I think you had your hand up a minute ago, so I'll get to you after that one. If homeowner is delinquent in property taxes and has not declared their homestead status, is there a workaround for that, or do they have to file their homestead declaration first and then wait to receive their next town statement? There are a lot of people who haven't filed for homestead status. Okay, thanks, Donna. There are a lot of people who haven't filed homestead status, and initially we were thinking that could be some sort of way of telling if somebody's actually using this as their personal residence. But it's one of those situations that it's not easy to. Some people don't file because they don't file their state taxes, or they have other reasons that they don't. So no, they don't have to file their homestead declaration before requesting assistance. So I would recommend that they do that on an ongoing basis, because obviously that decreases their tax bill and will help with their cash flow. But they don't necessarily have to, especially if they're facing an imminent tax sale or something like that. On the other hand, if it's not imminent, then yeah, I would ask that they do that, just because it saves money for the program. So
I'm just going to jump in one more time. So the free VITA tax preparation sites will help with homestead and property tax credit forms generally, even for folks who might have income under the income tax filing threshold. I can't stress enough how important it is for us when we're working with homeowners, particularly low to moderate income homeowners, to remind them that they need to every year file their homestead and property tax credit forms. We have so many clients that we see who are low income and don't file, and they end up delinquent on their mortgages because their escrow payment is way
Right.
too high as a result of not getting their income sensitive tax credits. So please, please, please remind people, if you need to send them to us, we'll get them connected. Just make sure folks are getting these forms filed by tax date, and the drop dead date is October 15th with a small penalty. You cannot do anything once you miss that October 15th deadline. You're just SOL. It's a really terrible draconian system. Okay, off my soapbox.
No, thank you,
Thank you.
Gregson. Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to add that, so I'm with CVO's mobile home program, and it's come to our attention that some of the people that are in cooperatively owned parks, they're not eligible for the renter's rebate. And if their income is so low they don't have to file taxes, they have, they're unaware of the homestead declaration situation, and then they don't have the incentive to get the renter's rebate. So it's kind of a unique small population of people that we're trying, and we're doing exactly what you suggested, Grace, is referring them to VITA programs wherever they are.
Yes, thank you, Rick. Yeah, it is a weird conundrum here, the way that works. So.
And I believe they just have to call 211 to schedule that appointment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty easy.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. So does anybody, let me go back to the questions that had been submitted. I think we've covered some of these issues. Paper applications. I think we talked about all that. One that came in was that somebody had called the helpline, the HAP helpline, our helpline, and was told to contact this particular nonprofit. And the person, all they needed was a clarification on how to answer application question, and was felt that the helpline could have done this. I guess, Rebecca, maybe you can sort of give some clarification on what the scope is of when somebody calls the helpline. What is the helpline there to help them do?
Yeah, so these call center agents are not program managers. So it really depends on what the question is, right? So there are questions they can handle from a technical point of view, like somebody's entering mortgage information, but they keep, trying to go to the next field and it's not letting them because they didn't hit the save button, or different things like that. We're walking them through some like troubleshooting of navigating the application. And they do have some very high level information on some like basic program eligibility type stuff, or when documentation is required. But they are not there to counsel them on making like decisions of how I should answer this question. So it would really depend on what the question was. I would need a little more information to say whether that would be a call center function or whether that's something they really should be referring to the HCA or another agency to help them really understand what they're answering. It's not a, they are not providing case management or program guidance at the call center level.
And then there was Patty had noted that she had a client who waited 40 minutes on the hold on the for the helpline. That is obviously not something that we want. Can you talk about the benchmarks for answering questions there?
Yeah, for sure, anything like that, please report in, because that should not be happening. I do get call center reports, and monitor those daily. I know, there are some times where they're on lengthy calls with some people and they can't take another one, but typically, I've not seen that in my hold report. So I want to make sure that those are being reported accurately. And that's not, it could be a one-off situation, but I want to make sure that it's not occurring often, because that should not be the case. It should not be more than just a couple of minutes. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I will look into those reports a little bit more closely.
And we have some hands up. Karen Rubin.
Yeah, I just wanted to back up to the paper application. Because I guess previous to, actually doing it, I thought that when we were doing it remotely with someone, we just needed to get that one form signed, but now we clearly need to. But I just want to make sure that we do not need, if we're entering the application for them, we don't need to fill out the whole paper application, right? We can just get a signature on that Vermont Homeowner Assistance Program authorizations, acknowledgements, and certifications, and then on the Vermont Homeowner Assistance Program mortgage authorizations. So those 2 pages.
Mm-hmm.
We just get those signed and uploaded, and that should cover it, right?
And then what else are you entering?
So, I mean, we'll fill out the application online just like they would on paper, but then and upload all the other documents. But for signature purposes, we just need these 2 additional pages, right?
And you're filling that information out on the case management side or on the applicant portal?
Well, I think that from what I'm learning today, I think I should be doing that through the case management side if they don't have an email address.
Okay.
I think that's what you are saying, right?
Yeah. Rebecca, is that consistent with what we're saying?
Yeah, I don't know that you can download that attestation to have just that piece signed.
Leslie just sent it to us, and so I have it in front of me, so I'll just separate it from the rest of the form. So
I thought I saw her upload the application.
Yes, the paper application, but at the end are those 2 forms.
Okay, hold on.
Right, so I could separate them. So what we're doing when we make an appointment with someone is telling them that we need these things signed, and then we figure out how we're going to get it to them. So we either mail it and then they mail it back, or they can come by and sign it at our front desk and then we scan it in or whatever. But we're not sitting down with people in our offices yet. So if we can just what I've done so far is not adequate. I'm gonna have to back up and fix what I've done. So now I want to make sure that going forward, I have it right. So if I just get them to sign these 2 forms.
Yeah, those last 2 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will definitely, I think that should work fine, because it is on its own page.
Right, I think that Karen, that would work.
Yep.
Okay.
And you're filling out the rest of the information that they're giving you in the electronic form. It's just that you're uploading these 2 paper pages.
Yes.
I see. Yeah.
Okay, so we're good. That's our plan. Thank you.
The plan. And Michaela.
Thank you. So I had a question in the chat, and I essentially, when the program first launched, any applicant that we had our name attached to would go into our portal. And then about the second week into the program, it was only the ones that were requesting services. So for example, I have over 15 applicants that I've attached my name to and assisted them with the application process, but they're no longer in my portal for me to, check on when they call, like, hey, have I been accepted? I can't see anything. And I was wondering if we could, I like the way that it was that we had it.
Are you an authorized representative on those applications, Michaela?
Yes.
So
come into my portal until, out of all the applicants, only one, for example, has requested housing counseling services. And I'm still waiting for those tasks to be populated, but only one out of all those applicants are in my portal now. And so, simple questions when they reach out, like, hey, how's the status? Have I, is my eligibility done? Am I eligible? I don't have any of those answers, and I feel bad that I have to refer them to the call center.
Unfortunately, if they are not requesting you to be their, if they're not requesting you to be their servicer, like helping them, then that's the way they'll have to go to the call center for status. I mean, they can go into the portal if they've submitted their application online in the portal. They can go into the portal at any time and see what their status is. They can see all their communications. They can see everything about their case. So it's not like they have to contact you if they filled out online or the call center, but if they're more comfortable doing that. But if they do not, and maybe you guide them that way, if they do not request housing counseling services, because from our understanding, it's 2 buckets, right? Helping apply and then continuing services afterwards. We had to have a disconnect of, if they don't request services, I can't just automatically put you in that bucket.
Right.
So they have to request those services in order for
and if they're going in the system and they're looking into their account to see what's happening, that's as much as the information you're going to have even going into the system. I mean, it is what it is. Like I said earlier, there was a very, we had a big pile that came in at the early part, and we're working through that. And there are some people who haven't been contacted yet, and they're in the queue, and we're working on them, and it's a 45 to 60-day process. And so we appreciate that people get antsy, but that is what it is, because these applications do take a lot of work to process and review.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thanks. There was another comment somebody just added. What about following up with additional paperwork and information? It would be great to have them show up in HCA cases immediately. Well, the HCA cases for housing counseling come to you once the pre-eligibility review is done, which means we have to have done their review for whether or not they actually are eligible for the program generally. And some of the follow-ups or information relate to things that relate to that, which would be income information or information about whether or not the place is their primary residence. So that's one of the reasons we need to make sure we have good contacts for people when they apply, so that we can go to them. And that's not necessarily housing counseling services that we've set up as part of our agreement. So the folks would need to be contacted directly for that kind of information. We have a hand up from Barbara Geary's.
So one of the things I'm pondering is that if we're too firmly enmeshed in our world of housing and not thinking about the client perspective, because I know that when we think of housing counseling, we have a concept or an idea of what that means. And so I wonder if we clarified that, we're saying if you want housing counseling, and a lot of people are like, no, I don't want counseling. Oh, but if I have a question, I want somebody to be able to answer that question. And
Right.
See, in our world, like, we would define that as housing counseling, being that liaison and being that person who can give them some confidence and comfort and communication. And so I'm wondering if we might need to clarify that, so that, for the people like we've been talking about, you help 15 people with the application and they're calling you back. They're obviously wanting us to be connected. So I'm wondering if the disconnect is the language we're speaking and what the client is perceiving. And so perhaps we could clarify somewhere on the client-facing side, do you want housing counseling, or would you like to be able to call a service provider to ask certain questions? I mean, we could wordsmith it to be better than that, but to make it clearer, so then for those people we are helping who do actually want to call us back, they are clicking, yes, I'm wanting information, and so they're clicking that counseling. So maybe maybe we think about
Well,
coaching as more in coaching than counseling. I don't
yeah,
know.
I think, well, if you're listed, if they add you as an authorized representative, right? Rebecca, doesn't that allow someone to then, as the authorized representative, call and find out about what's happening with an application?
Sure, they could call the call center and find out the status, even if they don't have access to that from the portal, because they haven't been assigned, right? So you are an authorized representative to inquire. And I think some of that comes from case status, and that kind of stuff is case management and call center functionality that honestly, you know, the HFA is paying call center and case management staff to handle. And I think there's a separate set of services that they're paying you to handle. And so we're just trying to have that divided line so that, you know, it's clear, and we're making sure that those things are, you know, those funds are being utilized and maximized the way that they were intended. So yes, if you, definitely the authorized representative. And I saw something else about emails. If you're designated as an authorized representative, even though you're not selected as the housing counselor, you may still see emails about that person because you are designated as an authorized representative. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you've been assigned. Like, it really is I would need some information on that of when you're going to see emails and not, but you may still get some status updates.
Rebecca, can we back up a little bit to that authorized representative? I feel like in the last meeting we had with you, you guys told us that authorized representative would be like a child of an elderly person or a family friend who's helping, that we would not be clicking the authorized representatives. We have a button to click saying I'm a service provider.
I mean, it's the same spot. You just, instead of putting your first name, last name as the child or whatever, there's a drop down to pick if you're a housing counseling agency, or if you're not, if you're a different nonprofit or helping, you could put your first name, last name in that area. But I guess maybe, and I don't remember that conversation, so I'm assuming I was on that call, but there's been a lot. That maybe it was the assumption, if you're assisting them through that process, that they were selecting you also as to be their housing, like representing them as housing counseling services. So maybe there was a disconnect, but if they're not selecting to have housing counseling services and you to continue servicing them in that capacity, then I definitely would have you designate yourself as, if they want you to be able to call in and speak on their behalf and get access to your information. I mean, you have to be very clear to them what that means as an authorized representative. They have full access to everything. Because at that point, then I don't know why they would want you to do housing counseling services.
But if we don't click that and we just say we're the service provider, then when we call and say, hey, help this person with their application, it seems like it's not moving, what's happening, they're not going to talk to us about it as a service provider?
Not until you've gotten your eligibility, the eligibility review's been done, and you've gotten it assigned to you. So the answer to them is you need to call them. If that is the situation, then the answer is you need to call the call center directly to get information. We're almost at our time, and I know that we can talk a lot about this, but I want to make sure that Grace has a minute to give everyone an update on foreclosure processes that have recently changed, and also this has come up with with utilities as well. But go ahead, Grace.
Sure. So maybe a week and a half ago now, the Supreme Court implemented some changes to their emergency sort of COVID court rules in a way that affects foreclosure process. So that starting February 22nd, every defendant in a foreclosure of a residential property that's a primary residence is going to get notice from the bank stating, you know, just basic information about VHAP and how to apply. And also that if you apply for VHAP and submit a request for a stay, the court will grant you a 60-day stay of your foreclosure case. And that notice will come with a form that people can fill out that basically has them attesting to, I submitted an application to VHAP. I believe I meet the basic eligibility requirements, like I've got a COVID hardship, I think I'm below the income guidelines, et cetera. They submit that to the court. That's going to put their foreclosure case on hold for 60 days. So to the extent folks are comfortable advising, you know, foreclosure defendants that you're working with to submit that form, one to the court and a copy to the bank's lawyer, once they've submitted a VHAP application, that's great. If you're not comfortable or you think people need more legal advice about that, you should have them call us at Vermont Legal Aid. We have a helpline where we can advise people about that, and we can send them sort of a standard letter with the form and instructions on how to submit that. And then certainly you should also feel free whenever someone is in a foreclosure process to click on their VHAP application if you're assisting them, or to advise them to do this, to say that they're at risk of, you know, foreclosure, and to ask for legal assistance on their application. And then once they get that basic eligibility review, they'll come through the portal to us and we can, you know, assist them through the foreclosure process. But I just wanted to make sure people were aware that there's now this opportunity for a minimum 60-day stay for folks who have submitted a VHAP application. And if for some reason VHAP doesn't process the application within the 60 days, or there's something going on, the court will have discretion to kind of take a look and see if it needs a longer stay, but that will at least give them that 60 days breathing room in the court process. And they can ask for that all the way up until confirmation of a foreclosure sale. So it doesn't matter where they're at in the process, they should be asking for the 60-day stay, particularly if they're further along in the process, because that's when they're at greater risk of losing their home while the application is being processed. On the Public Utility Commission front, we submitted a request that the emergency utility rule get changed to prohibit utility shutoffs during a VHAP, you know, while there's a VHAP application pending. There's been a bunch of positive comments that came in support. I understand LCAR has approved changes to the rule, and I have a draft of it. I just don't think the PUC has quite adopted the final rule, but that will also require utilities to give notice to delinquent utility customers of VHAP, and that if they contact the utility, they will, you know, no longer be at risk of shut off during the application process. So I will certainly try and update when I see that that final rule has come out. GMP is voluntarily already backing off of shutoffs when they're aware of a VHAP application. I don't know about other utility providers, but that rule should be in effect relatively soon.
Yeah, the Vermont Gas is also doing that. And the important thing is for people to, if they're having that issue, to make their application and then advise the utility of their application number. And then they can confirm with us that they are in process with us. Okay. Well, we are now at our time, and I know everybody's got things to do. So thank you all very much. We will schedule another meeting in another few weeks to hopefully to answer more questions and, you know, give you guys further updates. We appreciate all the hard work that you are doing. I know that this is all a process of everybody getting used to roles and responsibilities. So thanks again. And we will see you in a few weeks. Bye.